Okay, imagine this for a second. A banking fraud, just massive, so big, it genuinely threatened, the entire global financial system.
Right.
And the whole thing, orchestrated from a tiny, cramped flat somewhere in London.
It sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it?
Totally. But it's real, and that's what we're diving into today. The quite unbelievable story of the so-called Hungarian Circle and their massive banking scam.
Yeah, we've got this fantastic article that lays out the whole historical scheme. And our mission, really, for you listening, is to get under the skin of it. How was something this big even possible?
Right, the mechanics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the characters involved. And crucially, what lessons can we actually take away from it today? Because it's not just about the staggering sums of money, is it?
No, not at all.
It's a story about, well, criminal ingenuity, genius, but also about weaknesses in systems we trust and the psychology, behind both the crime and how people reacted to it.
Okay, let's get into it. The main player here, the mastermind, was a guy named Henry Oberlander, Czech national, apparently used a whole load of aliases, a real chameleon. And picture this, sort of a portly, middle-aged guy living pretty quietly in Notting Hill, but secretly pulling the strings on this huge international operation.
And the name Hungarian Circle, it's a bit of a misnomer, actually.
Yeah, that's what's wild. Despite the name, the crew he assembled, they were from all over the place. Really diverse.
Oh, absolutely. A very eclectic mix of, let's say, individuals with specific talents. You had Francisco Fiocca, an Argentinian forger, apparently renowned, get this, 11 international convictions against him, all in absentia.
Wow. He never got caught for those.
Apparently not. Then there was Emil Fleischmann. Eastern European, also had fraud convictions, and he claimed he'd been in the French Foreign Legion. Bit of a character.
Just like it.
And rounding out this core group, Andre Biro, a Brazilian gem dealer, he was kind of the logistics guy, the quartermaster. And Jorge Grinfeld, who is rather vague, just called himself an antiques dealer and property developer.
Okay, a real rogues gallery already. But it gets even stranger, doesn't it?
It does. They also had Karl Albert, who was a former Nazi tank commander.
Seriously?
Yes. And maybe the most surprising member of the group, Louis Tufnell. He was a top English squash player.
A squash player?
Yeah. And not just any squash player. He'd apparently been a financial advisor to some very big names. Lord Camrose, Lord Thompson.
That is bizarre. A Nazi tank commander, a top squash player, a master forger. How did this crew even come together, let alone pull off a massive fraud? What was the actual weak point they found?
Well, the key was the instrument they chose to exploit, the banker's draft. Now, you need to understand, a banker's draft isn't like your everyday check.
Right. It's guaranteed by the bank itself.
Exactly. It's treated like cash, essentially. Can't be recalled. It won't bounce. And that fundamental trust, that immediate negotiability, that was a vulnerability.
So the whole system is built on the idea that these things are safe, are reliable.
Precisely. And the Hungarian Circle just drove a truck right through that assumption of trust.
So they found the weak spot. But the method itself, it wasn't some high-tech digital thing, was it? It sounds almost simple.
That's what's so striking. The article points out their forgery setup was surprisingly basic. We're talking equipment costing less than maybe $1,300 back then.
For potentially bringing down the banking system, $1,300.
Incredible, isn't it? They use this to make counterfeit drafts. And the matching advice notes, those little confirmation slips that banks send each other, which added another layer of seeming legitimacy.
Ah, okay.
And the materials weren't even that hard to get. The paper was easy enough to match. The signatures they forged were kept deliberately simple because there were so many different banks with different draft designs and serial numbers.
It just slipped through the cracks, especially with the volume, right? How many did you say they process daily?
The article mentions something like 5,000 to 6,000 drafts passing through the system every day.
Whoa.
And maybe 80 to 100 of those were cashed by people just walking into banks. So this is where their strategy was quite clever. They didn't go for broke with one massive draft.
No, they kept it low-key.
Exactly. Calculated restraint. They'd request modest amounts, maybe $20,000, $50,000 at a time. Yeah. Amounts that, in the grand scheme of daily transactions, just wouldn't raise immediate red flags.
Just noise in the system.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the absolute killer element, the thing that let it run for so long, was the delay. The time lag before anyone even realized a fraud had happened.
How long are we talking?
It could be up to 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Because of how things worked, the telex between banks, manual account reconciliation, it was slow.
So by the time Bank A realized the draft from Bank B was fake,
the money was long gone. And so were the people who cashed it. It's kind of genius in a criminal way, understanding not just forgery, but the bureaucracy, the slowness of the system.
And they kept this up for 2 years, operating out of London.
2 years with impunity, targeting banks, get this, 35 different countries.
35, that's global.
Absolutely global. The article gives a great example of their sort of hit-and-run trip down to Australia.
Ah, yes, Melbourne and Adelaide. What happened there?
They hit 5 banks in Melbourne for over $36,000, then hopped over to Adelaide and got nearly another $8,000. The courier who cashed them was actually out of the country the same night.
Wow. Fast work.
Very. He only got tripped up later because a second bank in Adelaide got suspicious and decided to double-check. But it shows their speed and efficiency.
And when you add up all those modest amounts across 35 countries over 2 years, the total number must be staggering.
It really is. Scotland Yard put the figure at potentially up to $240 million.
Really?
But the article suggests it could have been even higher, maybe closer to $320 million. And what's almost as incredible is how many banks apparently didn't want anyone to know they'd been hit.
Why? Just embarrassment.
Partly, maybe. But it also points to this tension in finance, doesn't it? The fear of reputational damage, losing customer trust, might have actually outweighed the need to investigate fully and prevent it happening again.
That mafia-like silence the article mentions, it specifically calls out a Swiss bank and an American bank that just refused point blank to even check their records for forged drafts.
Yeah, it's baffling on one level. You'd think self-preservation would kick in, wouldn't you?
You really would.
But maybe the potential fallout from admitting vulnerability seemed worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that reluctance, that silence, almost let the whole thing carry on forever.
It's that classic thing, isn't it? Trying to hide a problem sometimes makes it so much worse down the line. So, okay, if the banks weren't catching on and the system was so slow, what finally brought them down? It wasn't some financial wizard figuring it out, was it?
No, not at all. Completely unrelated, almost. It came down to a tip-off about a character named William Ambrose, known as Billy the Boxer, former bookie from Soho.
Billy the Boxer. Okay.
Apparently, Billy the Boxer, who'd been living pretty modestly in East London, suddenly buys this huge house out in Surrey and a brand new Rolls-Royce Corniche.
Ah, that tends to attract attention.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
A sudden, very flashy change in lifestyle.
Yeah.
Someone noticed, someone talked.
Classic. So the police, Scotland Yard, they start looking into Billy.
They did, put him under surveillance. And this wasn't just a quick look, 4 months of constant observation. They took over 5,000 photographs.
That's serious police work.
Absolutely. And it paid off. Following Ambrose eventually led them straight to the top, to Oberlander himself.
The mastermind.
And, critically, it led them to the actual workshop, a flat at 9 Vere Court, which is where Fiocca, the Argentinian forger, had set up shop.
Gotcha. And then the bust happens.
Big time. Coordinated dawn raids across London, August 13th, 1976. 250 police officers hitting 24 buildings simultaneously.
Like something from a movie script again?
Totally. And the stuff they found, it just confirmed the scale of it all. At Vere Court, and also at Fleischmann's place, they found mountains of evidence.
What kind of stuff?
Vast quantities of the forged bankers' drafts, obviously, but also forged travelers' checks, stolen airline tickets, credit cards, loads of fake passports, fake ID documents, even forged U.S. dollar bills. It was a one-stop shop for international fraud.
Unbelievable. That must have sealed their fate at trial.
Pretty much. The trial was at the Old Bailey, lasted 3 months. Apparently one of the most expensive trials in British legal history up to that point.
I can imagine. And the judge recognized how serious this was.
Oh, definitely. Judge Gerald Hines, he described the whole thing as having immense gravity, said it was comparable to the Great Train Robbery, even international espionage.
Wow. High stakes.
And the prosecution argued quite chillingly that this gang genuinely could have wrecked the entire banking system of the Western world.
It's sobering to think how close they might have come. So what happened to them? Sentences.
Oberlander got 14 years in prison, plus a hefty fine, £50,000. The others got various terms, mostly between 3 and 8 years. Serious time.
But didn't Oberlander get out surprisingly early? There's a twist there too, right?
There is. He only served about 3 years, released in 1981. The official reason was poor health, something about diabetes.
Right.
He was then deported to the U.S., and kind of miraculously, his health seemed to bounce right back once he was there. He even started giving interviews, sort of basking in the notoriety.
Huh. Convenient recovery. And the money, all that cash, the hundreds of millions potentially. Did they ever find it?
Almost none of it. They found a tiny amount, like $350 in one of Oberlander's Swiss accounts. That's it.
So where did it all go?
Well, the article mentions speculation. Lots of talk about it being laundered through São Paulo and Brazil, maybe even funneled into mafia drug operations. But ultimately, nobody knows for sure it vanished.
Like a ghost. Just adds to the whole mystique, I suppose.
Yet it really brings us back to Oberlander's own cynical philosophy, what the article calls Henry's rule.
What was that?
His rule was, everyone is willing to give something for whatever it is they desire the most.
Explain that.
Well, he applied it to the banks. Their desire, he figured, was for confidentiality, for smooth, easy transactions, that negotiability we talked about. And they were willing to give security to get it. They prioritized ease over scrutiny.
That's quite a dark view. But maybe he had a point, given their success.
And what's even more disturbing is what he apparently said later, looking back. He was dismissive of modern anti-counterfeiting tech. Said something like, "It wouldn't be good enough to stop me if I went back to the old business. Nothing would stop me."
That is genuinely chilling, the confidence.
It really is. And it leaves you with the lasting legacy of the Hungarian Circle, doesn't it? It's this huge cautionary tale about how vulnerable even massive trusted systems can be.
And about the danger of banks or any large institution trying to sweep weaknesses under the rug. That mafia-like silence again.
Exactly. Because hiding the problem doesn't make it go away. In their case, it just let the fraud continue for years.
It's just amazing thinking back. A relatively simple plan, technically speaking, this bizarre motley crew of characters, and they exploit this one core feature of global finance, this trust in bankers' drafts, and run wild for 2 years.
It really challenges your assumptions.
It does. And thinking about Oberlander's rule, everyone is willing to give something for what they desire the most. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What systems today, things we think are rock solid, might actually have hidden vulnerabilities because of some underlying priority, convenience, speed, confidentiality.
What are we willing to trade away, perhaps without even realizing it? That's the unsettling question it leaves you with. A really good point to ponder.
Definitely food for thought. Well, thank you for walking me through that absolutely incredible story. A truly fascinating and slightly terrifying piece of financial history.